I'm Sarah, 22 years old, a college graduate as of 3 days ago, and officially not part of my family anymore. Growing up, I always knew I was different from them, not in the way that makes you special, in the way that makes you invisible. My parents were successful. Dad ran a commercial real estate company. Mom was a financial advisor with wealthy clients. They had money, status, a big house in the right neighborhood. And they had Emily. My sister was 2 years older than me, perfect in every way that mattered to them. She got into an Ivy League school, studied business, dated the right guys, wore the right clothes, said the right things at dinner parties. I was the accident baby, the one they didn't plan for. Mom told me that once when she'd had too much wine. She didn't apologize after, just looked at me like it was something I should have already known. I wasn't like Emily. I didn't fit their world. I liked computers, coding, spending hours figuring out how systems worked. That wasn't impressive to them. It wasn't something they could brag about at the country club. So I became invisible. They'd show up to Emily's events, every single one. But mine, there was always a reason they couldn't make it. When I graduated high school, they didn't come to the ceremony. Dad had a business meeting. Mom went with him. Emily took a photo of her lunch that day and posted it with the caption, "Celebrating Freedom." I was graduating that same afternoon. Nobody noticed, or if they did, nobody cared. College was my escape plan. I applied to schools far from home, got into a decent state university 3 hours away. When I told my parents, Dad just nodded and said he hoped I'd figure out what I wanted to do with my life. He didn't offer to help pay for it. Mom said college wasn't for everyone, and maybe I should consider community college instead, save money. Emily had gotten a full ride to her Ivy League, but they'd still set up a trust fund for her expenses, room and board, books, spending money. I got nothing. So I worked. 2 jobs through college, sometimes 3. I was a barista in the mornings, worked the library front desk in the afternoons, did freelance coding projects at night. I slept 4, maybe 5 hours a night for 4 years. My GPA wasn't perfect. How could it be? But I graduated. Computer science degree. No debt because I'd paid as I went. I thought maybe they'd be proud of that. I invited them to my graduation, sent the invitation 2 months in advance. Mom said they'd try to make it. Dad didn't respond. Emily said she'd be there. She even seemed genuine about it. I let myself hope, just a little. That was my first mistake. Graduation day was bright and hot. May in the South meant humidity that stuck to your skin. I walked across that stage with 200 other students. Heard my name called, received my diploma. Nobody cheered for me. I didn't expect them to. I'd invited exactly 3 people, my parents and Emily. I saw them in the stands. They'd actually come. Something in my chest loosened a little. Maybe this was a turning point. Maybe things would be different now. After the ceremony, we met in the parking lot. Emily hugged me, Mom smiled, Dad shook my hand. He suggested dinner, a nice place, to celebrate. I should have known something was wrong. Dad never suggested nice dinners, not for me. But I was too relieved to question it. We went to this upscale steakhouse downtown, the kind with cloth napkins and waiters who introduced themselves. The kind I'd never been to with my family before. Everything felt surreal, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. We ordered, made small talk. Dad asked about my plans after graduation. I told him I was applying to jobs, had a few leads, nothing solid yet. He nodded, said that was smart, taking time to figure things out. Mom ordered wine, Emily got a cocktail. I stuck with water. I had a shift at the coffee shop the next morning, needed to stay sharp. The food came. It was good, expensive. I felt guilty with every bite knowing what it cost. Halfway through the meal, Mom stood up. She had a glass in her hand. I thought she was making a toast. My heart actually skipped. A toast? From me? From my mother? Then I saw Dad reach into his jacket. He pulled out an envelope, cream-colored, thick paper, official-looking. Mom cleared her throat. The restaurant got quieter. She said they had an announcement to make about my graduation. I smiled, nervous, confused. Dad slid the envelope across the table. My name was on it, Sarah Mitchell. Mom said they'd been discussing it as a family, that they'd made a decision. I opened the envelope. Legal papers, multiple pages, official letterhead from a law firm I recognized, expensive lawyers. The word disownment appeared multiple times. My brain couldn't process it at first. I read the same line 3 times. Hereby sever all familial ties and legal connections. I looked up. Mom was still standing, glass in hand, watching me. Dad leaned back in his chair, calm, like he'd just discussed the weather. Emily had her phone out. She was recording, pointed directly at my face. The realization hit me like cold water. This was planned. All of it. The graduation attendance, the nice dinner, the public setting. They'd orchestrated my humiliation. I heard myself ask why. My voice sounded far away. Dad said I was an adult now, that it was time for a clean break. Mom added that they'd never really connected with me anyway, that I'd always been different, difficult. Emily zoomed in with her phone, making sure she got my reaction. People at other tables had stopped eating, stopped talking, just watching. My hands were shaking, the papers rattled. I saw signatures, dates, 2 weeks old. They'd filed this 2 weeks ago while I was taking my final exams, while I was preparing to walk across that stage. They'd planned to ruin my graduation day for half a month. My throat closed up, my eyes burned, but I didn't cry. I wouldn't. Not with Emily's phone in my face, not with strangers watching, not with my parents sitting there like I was a business transaction they were closing. I looked at the papers again, really looked. They'd included a clause about future contact, essentially a legal cease and desist. They didn't want me reaching out, didn't want me at family events, didn't want me to exist in their world anymore. They'd erased me, legally, officially, permanently. I folded the papers, put them back in the envelope, looked at my mother, my father, my sister with her recording phone. I thanked them. My voice was steady, cold, not my own. I thanked them for coming to my graduation, for the dinner, for making their feelings clear. Then I stood up, picked up my purse, and walked out of that restaurant. I heard Emily laugh behind me, heard her say something to Mom. The sound followed me all the way to the parking lot. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just breathing. The papers were still in my hand. My family had legally disowned me. On my graduation day. With an audience. For entertainment. I drove home to my tiny studio apartment, the one I'd rented with my barista money. It was small, 1 room, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, but it was mine. I sat on my bed, stared at the legal papers. Then I started laughing. Not happy laughter, the kind that hurts, the kind that comes when something is so absurd your brain can't process it any other way. They thought this would destroy me. They thought I needed them. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known because they'd never paid attention, was that I'd already left. 3 months before graduation, I'd applied to an internship program. It was competitive, really competitive, a tech startup that was making waves in the industry. They were looking for developers who could think differently, who could solve problems creatively. I'd spent a week on my application, built a demo project specifically for them, Stayed up for 48 hours straight perfecting it. I got an interview, then a second interview, then a third with the CEO herself. I didn't tell my parents. Why would I? They'd never cared about my coding projects before. I got the internship. Started in January. Worked 20 hours a week while finishing my final semester. It was brutal. Classes during the day, internship in the evenings, coffee shop shifts squeezed in between. But the work was incredible. Real projects, real code going into production, real problems to solve. The senior developers started noticing me, asking for my input, giving me more complex assignments. I learned more in those 3 months than I had in 4 years of classes. 2 weeks before graduation, my manager called me into a meeting. The CEO was there, the head of engineering, my direct supervisor. They wanted me full-time, not an entry-level position, senior developer, real responsibilities, real projects. The salary they offered was more than I'd made in an entire year working 3 jobs. 6 figures, plus stock options in a company that was growing fast. I nearly cried right there in the conference room. They asked if I needed time to think about it. I signed the offer letter on the spot. Start date, 1 week after graduation. I'd done it, completely on my own, with no family money, no connections, no help. Just 4 years of barely sleeping and working until my eyes burned. So, when my parents handed me those disownment papers, when they tried to break me in front of strangers, when Emily recorded my pain for entertainment, I was already gone. I had a job starting in 6 days that paid more than my father's first 10 years in business. I had skills that companies fought over. I had a future that didn't include them at all. The disownment papers were meaningless. I'd already disowned them in every way that mattered. They just didn't know it yet. That first week at my new job was overwhelming. They set me up with equipment, 2 monitors, a laptop that cost more than my car, a budget for software and tools. My own desk, my own projects, my own code going into a product that thousands of people used. I worked 12-hour days. Not because I had to, because I loved it. I was good at this, really good. My code was clean, efficient, creative. Within 2 weeks, I'd optimized a core system that had been causing problems for months, reduced load time by 40%. The CTO praised my work in a company-wide meeting. People I didn't know started stopping by my desk to ask questions, to get my opinion. I was becoming someone here. Someone who mattered. Not invisible, not an accident, not a disappointment. Just good at what I did. A month in, they gave me my first major solo project. Building a new feature from scratch, full ownership. I threw everything into it. Sketched designs at 2 a.m., tested edge cases obsessively, rewrote sections until they were perfect. I presented it 6 weeks later. The CEO called it exceptional. Said it was the kind of thinking that would define the company's future. They promoted me, gave me a raise, added more stock options. I was 22 years old, less than 3 months out of college, and I was thriving. I moved out of my studio apartment, found a 1-bedroom in a nicer part of town. Nothing fancy, but it had a real kitchen, a living room, space to breathe. I bought furniture, not much, a couch, a desk, a bed that wasn't secondhand. Small things, but they were mine. Paid for with my own money from a job I'd earned in a life I'd built. I didn't post about it on social media, didn't tell anyone who didn't need to know. Let my family think I was struggling. Let them think their disownment had worked. I was too busy building something real to care about proving them wrong. The transformation was quiet. I started taking better care of myself, had time for real meals instead of ramen and coffee, started sleeping 7 hours a night instead of 4. My skin cleared up, the permanent exhaustion faded from my eyes. I joined a gym, nothing intense, just a place to move my body and clear my head after work. Started running in the mornings, just 20 minutes, but it helped. I made friends at work, real ones, people who understood what I did, who got excited about the same problems I got excited about. We'd grab lunch together, go out for drinks after work sometimes. Normal things, things I'd never had time for in college. One of the senior developers, Marcus, became a mentor. He'd been in the industry for 15 years, knew everything. He taught me things they don't teach in school: how to navigate novice politics, how to advocate for myself, how to think long-term about my career. He told me I had real talent, that I could go far if I stayed focused. I believed him. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. 6 months after graduation, after the disownment, I barely recognized myself. Not physically, though that had changed too, but internally. I walked differently, talked differently, held my head up. I wasn't the invisible girl anymore, the accident, the disappointment. I was a senior developer at a successful company, someone people listened to, respected. I had a life that was entirely my own, and my family had no idea. I heard about it through a family friend, someone who'd known us for years. She reached out on Facebook, said she'd heard about the disownment, wanted to check on me. I told her I was fine, better than fine. Then she told me what was happening with my family. Dad's business partner had been embezzling for years, apparently. Small amounts at first, then larger, then everything he could get his hands on. The company was hemorrhaging money, had been for months. Dad hadn't noticed, too focused on appearances, on maintaining the image of success. By the time the auditors caught it, it was too late. The business was ruined, debts they couldn't pay, clients leaving, lawsuits coming. Dad tried to save it, poured his personal savings in, took out loans against everything he had. It wasn't enough. The company filed for bankruptcy in September, 4 months after my graduation. But it got worse. Mom's financial advisory practice had been built on Dad's connections. His clients became her clients. When his business collapsed, her clients panicked, started pulling their money, going to other advisors. She tried to hold on, but the damage was done. Half her clients left within 2 months. Then someone started asking questions about her investment strategies. Turned out Mom had been putting client money into high-risk investments without proper disclosure. Not illegal exactly, but ethically questionable and definitely against industry standards. Word spread fast in their social circle. More clients left, then more. By November, she'd lost 80% of her business. The money dried up fast. No more country club membership, no more charity galas, no more expensive dinners and shopping trips. They tried to hide it, keep up appearances, but you can't fake money forever. The house went up for sale in December. The big house with the perfect lawn in the perfect neighborhood. It sold fast, had to, they needed the cash. But after paying off the mortgages and loans, there wasn't much left. They moved to a rental, a 2-bedroom apartment in a part of town they used to call unfortunate. Everything they'd built, the image, the status, the perfect life, gone in 8 months. And Emily, perfect, golden Emily, she'd been in a master's program, business, of course, following in Dad's footsteps. It was expensive, really expensive. Dad had been paying for it, tuition, rent, living expenses. When the money disappeared, so did Emily's funding. She tried to get loans, but her credit wasn't great. She'd been living off Dad's money for so long she'd never built her own financial history. No loans, no funding, no way to pay for the program. She had to drop out, moved back in with our parents, into their tiny apartment. The girl who'd recorded my humiliation, who'd laughed at my pain, was now sleeping on her parents' couch, jobless, with an unfinished master's degree and no prospects. She tried to get work, but she had no real skills, no experience outside of being a professional student. Entry-level jobs didn't want her. She was overqualified on paper, but underqualified in practice. She ended up working retail, minimum wage, same store where I used to buy my work clothes when I was in college. The family friend told me all of this over several conversations. I listened, processed, felt complicated things.
Part of me, the hurt part, the part that had been erased and humiliated, felt something like satisfaction. But mostly, I just felt tired. They'd built their life on appearances, on status, on looking successful instead of being successful. And when it all fell apart, they had nothing underneath. No savings, no backup plan, no real skills beyond knowing how to look important. They'd created their own downfall. I just happened to survive long enough to see it.
Emily showed up at my office on a Wednesday in February, almost a year after the graduation dinner. Security called up, said I had a visitor. I almost said to send her away, but curiosity won. I met her in the lobby. She looked different, thinner, tired. Her hair wasn't perfect anymore. Her clothes were off the rack instead of designer. She looked smaller than I remembered. We stood there for a moment, not speaking. She broke first. Said she needed to talk to me, that it was important. I didn't invite her up, didn't suggest we go somewhere private. Just stood there in the lobby of my office building, in my work clothes, confident, comfortable. Everything she wasn't. She told me they were struggling, all of them, that Dad's business had fallen apart, that Mom had lost her clients, that they'd lost the house. I knew all of this already, but I let her talk. She said they needed help, just temporary, just until they got back on their feet. She was asking if I could loan them money. The audacity of it hit me like a slap. The family that had legally disowned me, that had humiliated me publicly, that had erased me from their lives, was asking me for money? I asked her if they'd sent her, if this was their idea. She hesitated, then nodded. They couldn't ask me themselves, too proud, so they'd sent Emily. I asked her if they'd meant it, the disownment. She said they'd been angry, that they didn't really mean it, that family was family. I asked her about the recording, about filming me crying at my graduation dinner. Asked if she'd thought that was funny. She said she was sorry, that it was wrong, that she regretted it. Her voice cracked a little when she said it. I asked if she was sorry, or if she was just desperate. She didn't answer. I stood there looking at my sister, this person who'd made my life smaller, who'd taken joy in my pain. She looked broken now, lost. Part of me wanted to help, the part that remembered being kids together, before the favoritism, before everything got complicated. But that part was small, quiet. The louder part remembered everything else. I told her I wouldn't give them money. Her face fell. She started to argue. I cut her off. Told her I'd send her information, contact for a good financial advisor, job boards that had helped me, resources for getting back on your feet, but no money. She asked if that was really all I was going to do. I told her it was more than they'd ever done for me. She said that was cruel, that I was being heartless. I felt my jaw tighten. Told her that heartless was disowning your daughter at her graduation dinner, in public, for entertainment. Heartless was recording someone's pain for fun. Heartless was erasing someone because they didn't fit your image. I wasn't being heartless. I was just giving them the same energy they'd given me. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She said she didn't know what else to do, that they were really desperate. I softened slightly. Told her to get a job, any job, that pride wouldn't pay their bills. Told her to learn actual skills, not just degree credentials. Told her to stop waiting for someone to save them and start saving themselves, the same way I had. She asked if I hated them. The question surprised me. I thought about it, really thought about it. Told her I didn't hate them, that hate required more energy than I was willing to give. I just didn't need them anymore. And that was the difference. She stood there for another moment, looking lost, young, despite being older than me. Then she left. I watched her walk out of the building, shoulders hunched, defeated. I felt a twist in my chest. Not guilt exactly,
But not satisfaction either. Just sadness. For all of us. For what we could have been. For what we'd never be. I went back upstairs to my office. Back to my work, my life, my future. The life I'd built without them.
I didn't help them financially, not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted them to suffer, but because they needed to figure it out themselves, the same way I had. Nobody helped me when I was working 3 jobs and sleeping 4 hours a night. Nobody helped me when I was eating ramen for every meal to save money. Nobody helped me when I was alone and invisible and wondering if I'd ever be enough. I survived that, turned it into something. They could too. It wasn't cruelty. It was the same lesson they'd taught me. Figure it out on your own. The months passed. I heard occasional updates through the family friend. Dad found work, not glamorous, managing a small warehouse for a distribution company. Fraction of what he used to make, but it was something. Mom started a small consulting business from their apartment, helping small businesses with basic financial planning. Not wealthy clients anymore, but honest work. Emily got a full-time job in retail management, worked her way up from sales floor to assistant manager, actually earning her position instead of having it handed to her. They were rebuilding, slowly, without the status, without the image, just surviving, day by day, like I had. I didn't reach out, neither did they. The disownment still stood, legally, officially, but it didn't matter anymore. I kept building my life. Got another promotion at work, lead developer now, managing my own small team. Moved to a better apartment, 2 bedrooms. One I turned into a home office. Started saving, real savings. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I paid off my student loans, every last penny. It felt like cutting a chain I'd been dragging for years. I traveled, took a real vacation, went to places I'd only seen in photos. Made more friends, real connections, people who knew me as Sarah the developer, not Sarah the disappointment. I dated, had relationships that didn't work out and ones that did. Normal things, things I'd never had time for before. I learned what it meant to be happy, actually happy. Not the temporary relief of finishing a shift or passing a test, but the deep, steady kind of happiness that comes from building a life you're proud of. A year and a half after the disownment, I ran into Mom, grocery store, random encounter. She looked older, tired, but not broken. We made eye contact across the produce section. She started to walk away, then stopped, came over, said hi, asked how I was. I told her I was good. I was. She said she'd heard I was doing well, that I had a good job. I nodded. She said she was glad, that she'd always known I'd figure it out. The lie was so casual, so practiced. I almost laughed, but I didn't. Just said thank you. She asked if we could talk sometime, maybe get coffee. I told her I didn't think that was a good idea. She looked hurt, said she was trying. I told her I understood, that I appreciated it, but some things you can't come back from. She asked if I'd ever forgive them. I thought about it, told her I already had. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, didn't mean letting them back in. It just meant I wasn't carrying their weight anymore. She nodded, looked like she wanted to say more, but didn't. We said goodbye. I finished my shopping, went home, felt okay about it. Not good, not bad, just okay. That night, I sat on my couch in my apartment with my 2 bedrooms and my home office and my savings account. Looked at the life I'd built, every piece of it earned, every piece of it mine. I thought about the girl at that graduation dinner, shaking hands, holding disownment papers, trying not to cry while her sister recorded. She felt like someone else now, someone I used to be, in another life. The person I'd become didn't need their approval, didn't need their acceptance, didn't need their love. I'd found all of that in myself, and that was the real transformation. Not the job, not the money, not the apartment, but learning that I was enough, on my own, without them. They'd tried to erase me. Instead, they'd freed me to become someone they could never touch, never diminish, never make invisible again. I succeeded, not because of them, not even in spite of them, but completely separate from them. I built a life so full, so complete, that their absence didn't even leave a hole. That's not revenge.
Revenge would have been trying to hurt them back, trying to prove them wrong, trying to make them see what they'd lost. This was something else. This was just living well, building something beautiful and strong and entirely my own, and letting them exist somewhere in the distance, in a life that no longer intersected with mine. Sometimes the best way to win isn't to fight back. It isn't to prove your worth to people who'll never see it. It's to just keep walking forward, keep building, keep becoming, until you look back one day and realize you've traveled so far that they can't even see you anymore. And you're okay with that. More than okay. You're free. 2 years after my graduation, I'm 24 years old. I'm a lead developer at a company that's changing its industry. I have an apartment I love, friends who value me, a career that excites me. I have savings, plans, dreams. I have a life that's entirely mine. And somewhere across town, my family is rebuilding their own lives, learning the lessons I learned, figuring out who they are without the money and status. Maybe they'll become better people. Maybe they won't. It's not my job to know anymore. My job is just to keep living, keep growing, keep being the person I fought so hard to become. The girl who was disowned at her graduation dinner is gone, and in her place is a woman who knows her worth, who doesn't need anyone else's permission to exist, who built something beautiful from nothing. That's my revenge. That's my victory. That's my life. And it's enough.